Welcome, everyone, to our first interview of our 2024 Creative Arts in FE project. I'm Eddie Playfair, and I work for the Association of Colleges as a Senior Policy Manager. The Creative Arts in FE project is delivered by the AOC and project by my colleague Emma Cracknell. And the project is sponsored by the Copyright Licensing Agency and the UAL awarding body. I'm really delighted to welcome Princess also known as P.A. Bytes, who's a Manchester-based poet, songwriter, musician, filmmaker, and actor. She won Slambassadors, was a finalist of BBC Words First in 2020. She's a Young Identity member. She's winner of One Mic Stand 2021. Deep breath. Manchester Young Creator of the Year 2021. AUB International 2022 Poetry Prize longlist. She's worked with the BBC, with Cambridge University, and Selfridges. Princess's debut poetry collection, called Soft Tortures, was published in 2017. So, welcome, Princess. And I'm really looking forward to our conversation. We're mainly going to be talking about you as a writer, but also maybe a bit about you as a person as well, and your practice, your journey, and any advice you might have for young creatives. So, if we can just start by asking how you started writing and storytelling, and what are your earliest memories of writing? And, were you always a storyteller, a writer?
Yeah, I would say that I started writing at 9 years old, um, poems, um, to deal with my emotional world, my internal world. And it was really helpful because writing things down really helped me process my feelings, but also helped me understand myself more and the people around me. And that was really important to me because I always felt alienated as a child. I'm very different. I have a disability, sickle cell anemia, and I've experienced a lot of physical pain symptoms due to my condition. But also I feel like my condition also contributed to me being very empathetic towards people and wondering about their own internal world and struggles and what parts of the world excites them and makes them happy and makes them want to stay, because this world is really confusing sometimes. And then that kind of there was an evolution where I started to write prose as well. And then I realized poetry was my love. I went through a phase of like writing sci-fi, and I'm kind of coming back to that as well, because a lot of my poetry explores technology. So I would say, yeah, I started writing at 9 years old to deal with my emotional health and my internal world. And I experienced grief very young as a child. My father passed away at 9 as well. And that was the same age when I really found out about what sickle cell anemia meant. So that just made me want to write. And then I started to realize that my pain wasn't unprecedented. That's a quote by James Baldwin. You read and then you realize your pain isn't unprecedented. And that was like beautiful for me. It made me connect to people on such a deeper level. And I was like, oh my gosh, I need to find more creative minds and read and soak up all the material in the world, because the truth is, I'm obsessed with knowledge and also obsessed with connecting to people.
So it sounds like the process of writing isn't always smooth, and that there can be pain involved. I mean, obviously pain in life, but pain in writing. I mean, one of the quotes from your collection is, "It's funny, my mother says I hurt myself to spite her, but she doesn't know I hurt myself because I am a writer. 3 times I am." So there's that sense of the kind of combination of pleasure and pain, but also that really strong drive to write. Is that right?
Definitely. I feel like writing is almost woven into my very existence, my very being, my essence. For me, there's like that tension between the almost meditative state of writing. Like, it really helps you zone in and go into the flow state, and it's really healthy for your mind and your emotional health. But at the same time, there's a lot of things you have to neglect to be a writer. And it's juggling that, okay, I'm gonna go to writing groups. I'm going to spend time reading and opening my mind up to different literature. I'm going to also spend time on fellowships. I'm going to apply for competitions. I'm going to show people my work, even though I sometimes don't think it's good. Like, all of this takes a lot of energy, and that means you might neglect friendships or relationships or even your own health in other aspects that isn't related to your creativity. So it's really important to balance that. And that's kind of what I'm exploring in that poem is, yes, my mother sometimes feels like there's one way I behave and it's because of one reason, which is her perception. And I have a good relationship with my mother, but that's a specific poem. But really, the reason I'm like that is because I have a deep, relentless spirit to create. And having that creative spirit is great because it's an unstructured process and it's a lot of energy. But also, it means that sometimes you don't do other things that you should be doing. So, as a writer, I would say it's great to put energy into your practice and to invest in yourself, but you also need to make time for other things that can also inspire your writing, which is just living. If you don't live, what do you have to write about? So that poem is about that tension, the pleasure and pain of writing, but also the expectations, the inner voice that is a critic, and also the expectations you put on yourself as a writer that, oh, I always have to be successful, I always have to have output, which isn't always realistic. It's just, I feel like what's most important is being consistent and realizing that being a writer is essential part of your essence, but it's not all that you are. So it's really exploring those tensions between like the pleasure and pain of like the creative process, the push and pull basically.
Oh, that's really interesting. And so, can you say a bit about how you find, so it's a balance, how you find that balance, and where do you get your ideas from? How do you turn them into writing? But also how you manage that balance with, between life and writing.
So I actually go to a lot of exhibitions. I'll go to film exhibitions and I'll go to poetry events. I go to the library a lot and just sit in the library. Manchester Poetry Library is a great library. And I'm also one of the resident artists um, in the Poets of Colour Incubator program, which has been really amazing, which has been helping my creativity. So I really urge writers to engage in fellowships, to apply for incubator programs. These are development programs, artistic development programs where you get paid to develop your practice. A lot of writers are not from middle class backgrounds, a lot of them are working class. And if that is your background like me, then it's really important that you go and apply for things that can help your finances whilst also giving you time and space to experiment with your creative practice. So I'm involved in a lot of programs like that throughout my career, applying, and it's fine, you're going to be rejected for a lot of them, but I've noticed there's a theme that you usually get rejected, and then when you do get accepted for something, it's better than all the things you got rejected for. So just keep being positive. I'd also say that read widely. Don't read the genre you're in. So I read a lot of sci-fi, I read a lot of self help books. I love The School of Life. They give me great advice. There was one quote I read from the School of Life about envy and how you can use envy for your advantage. And instead of using envy to hurt people, envy usually tells you the type of things you desire and the type of things you should be trying to do. So, for example, if you've always loved dancing and you know someone, a friend but isn't very close, who's a dancer and they're successful, instead of being envious, encourage them and ask them for advice on what made them get into dancing and how you can get into dancing. Rather than being negative or mean, use your envy as inspiration. And that's really healthy. I think a great way to be a writer or any type of artist is how can you use your negative emotions and explore that in a positive way? How can you use your envy, your sadness, your despair, um, your self criticism, and how can you share that in a way that makes people feel safe and reveals something about themselves that they didn't even fully know? A lot of the times why I enjoy writing and reading is it reveals something about my subconscious that I didn't even know. A writer will say a perfectly crafted sentence and I'll be like, I didn't even know I felt like that, but you put it into words for me. And I think that's the beauty of reading and writing. You're able to show your internal world and that helps people feel less alone. So I would say read widely, also watch things because that can inspire your writing. Some of my favorite movies are Paprika 2006, that's an anime, and it explores dreams and technological warfare in dreams. Imagine someone could hack your dreams. And that's one of the topics I'm exploring, how technology is changing the way we find meaning in the world. So, and our relationships and reality generally. So, and algorithms. So, it was interesting to watch that film. So, think about how in your in your downtime, how you can do things that also help your writing. Um, John Michel Basquiat, he is notorious for this. He had such a great output when it comes to his paintings, and that was because he read widely, and a lot of his there were like little poems in his work sometimes, or little phrases, and a lot of those were taken out of books, some like random books, historical books about war, or sometimes painting criticism books, like art criticism books. So it's like it doesn't have to be the most obvious thing. And I would say always respect the people that influenced you. That really helps. So I would say my advice to writers to have that balance is to do things in your spare time that you actually enjoy, which can also feed into your writing. So follow your passions, follow your intuition, your inner child. What do you like doing? And that will naturally manifest in your work, and people will like it because it's authentic.
Wow, so there's a lot there about reading. Anything particularly about what you're reading now, what you particularly enjoy now? You mentioned some writers and artists, but anything particularly you're reading now that you'd recommend? Because I think sometimes young people are not sure how to widen their reading, where to look, and what to try. Because as you say, people can get stuck in a genre, can't they? And they're not sure how to break out of it. Have you got any particular advice about that?
Yeah, definitely. I would say I really love Louise Cluck. She's a poet. I love her book Averno, but I really love all her books. Um, and she's recently passed away, so rest in peace, Louise. Um, I also love Mary Oliver. She's a great poet. Audre Lorde. I like Rachel Long, Rumi. When it comes to fiction writers, James Baldwin, Giovanni's Room is a gorgeous book. Um, and I really enjoy the nonfiction of Bell Hooks. She writes a lot of self help type of work, and feminist literature. So I would recommend Bell Hooks if you want to find ways to engage in relationships in more healthy, non transactional ways. And that can also inspire whatever practice you have, whether that's painting or writing, exploring how we can like change relationships in a way that is beautiful for everyone and healthy for both men and women. Um, I read just a vast array, and sometimes I'll just go to the library and I won't know the artist. I'll just pick up a book. One of the books I read recently that I really enjoyed was Oculus by Sally May. I can't remember her last name, but she's a great writer, and that is about technology from an Asian American perspective, and how Asian Americans are kind of portrayed in the media. And it was a beautiful collection that really explored how technology is changing our relationships and how sometimes it can dehumanize women. So I would just say, kind of pick up books randomly from the library as well, and sometimes it will surprise you because you won't necessarily have known that artist, but then it would have broadened your reading list and your repertoire, and also you will have learned more things about yourself because you probably wouldn't have picked up that book if you didn't randomly pick it up, and now you've seen that you've enjoyed it. So that means you need to go out of your comfort zone more often and read more widely. And also, it's okay to not just read poetry, and it's okay to not just read whatever genre you're in. You really have to broaden it. And a lot of the times, what will inspire your writing is music. What will inspire your writing is a film. A lot of Even a lot of films are inspired by books. I feel like all arts are kind of like we all collaborate. It's like the unconscious, we're all collaborating in a way, and one thing will inspire someone and another thing will inspire another person. So I just feel like it's important to really soak up art in any context, in any format. Soak it up. Even art criticism, because it can help you look at art in a different way. So I would say don't just read, but really expand your horizons, because even in books, you see references to pop culture. So it's really important to be aware of the zeitgeist and where you are currently in the consciousness, and also what is important to you within that consciousness. For me, it's technology, disability rights, women, Black people, Palestinian rights, stuff like that. But for other people, it'll be different. So it's really important to explore your desires, your needs, and things you care about.
And these things are all in conversation with each other, aren't they? So that's what can be creative. That's what's so fertile. Thank you. That's fantastic. Um, and clearly, you're reading. The reading and writing influence each other, don't they? So I wanted to ask you some fairly practical questions about getting published. This is something that young people often ask when they're when they've been writing a bit and they're thinking, well, I want to reach a bigger audience. How did you first get published? And what are the barriers and the obstacles in that process? And how do you get started, basically?
Well, I was absolutely relentless. I literally started posting poems on Tumblr, and people would message me and be like, "Wow, your poems are really amazing. I really like them." So that made me happy. I just started to formulate a collection, and then I self-published my collection. A lot of people are afraid of self-publishing, but I feel like it can be amazing. There's a lot of artists who have self-published, gone viral, people have enjoyed their work, and it also sets you up to be confident once people do enjoy your work and give you comments on it, to go, okay, I'm gonna apply for competitions now. I'm gonna attempt to apply to put my poems to be published by journals. So I'm gonna submit to journals. And that was the trajectory. So I actually self-published first, and I was like, I'm not gonna wait, and I self-published at 16. So I don't want people to think, oh, I'm too young to be an artist. I have to wait till I graduate. I wanted to prove to my mum that I was serious about this. So I self-published, um, put the cost for the book cover, all of that myself, from saving my own money. I'm working class, by the way, so I had to save for about 6 months to do this. And it wasn't too expensive, luckily. But I did that, and it was quite successful. It was very well liked on Instagram and Tumblr. Multiple thousands of people liking it, which was great for my self-esteem as a 16-year-old, especially a 16-year-old that didn't have very high self-esteem. And then from there, I was like, actually, I feel like I feel confident enough to apply for competitions. And the first competition I actually applied for was Slambassadors, and that was I was chosen by Joelle Taylor as one of the winners, and that was amazing because Joelle Taylor has gone on to do massive things and win massive prizes, and is also a lovely person. That was very affirming to my creative spirit. So I feel like there's this I feel like there's honestly a lot of misinformation to artists that you have to rely on organizations and institutions to sign off on your work as great
And
before you
agents.
can.
That,
And
that's
agents
fear of
and
how do I
agents.
find an agent?
How do you find an
Yeah.
agent exactly? So there's a lot of fear that you have to wait for someone else to validate you, but no, you can validate yourself, you can believe in yourself, and people like people who are relentless and confident. It makes them feel like they can be confident. People don't like people who are scared. That's the truth. So you need to just be relentless and not listen to your inner critic. It's okay to be like, yes, I am a bit scared to do this. Yes, some people won't like it, but there is a market for people who will, so let me try. And it's really important, because once you do try, you won't stop. Once you actually initially do it, you'll just feel that, like, that urge, the vitality to just want to do it. So that's what I did. I self-published at 16. It was relatively successful. I was quite surprised by the reactions, especially on social media. People really resonated with some of the poems. They were more short poems, and that was to kind of reflect my age as well. Small, short, instantaneous, to like explore adolescence and how it's a short period of your life, but it really has an impact on you. Um, and that was amazing for me, because from some ambassadors in 2023, I won an Eric Gregory Award, and that's one of the most prestigious awards you can win as a someone 30 and under. And people like Simon Armitage have won this award. So people may tell you, don't self-publish. That doesn't look professional. People find that embarrassing, because these are some of the advices I got as a young person, but I just didn't listen. It's okay for you to be embarrassed about your previous work. There is some poems I cringe at now that I'm like, oh my gosh, I wrote that, but then that shows you've progressed. So it's okay. I actually like it, because it's the same with music. There's some singers I've listened to that their first EP, their singing wasn't that great, but they had some good lyrics, and then later their singing became amazing. But then isn't it beautiful as a fan to watch that progress? Because then it proves to you I can have that progress one day in my writing or in my acting or in my poetry. So it's like, it's really important to not be afraid of your own growth, and not be afraid to be like, I might not like that in the future, but it resonates for me now. And there's readers that it's going to help and resonate with too. And that's the important thing, because your writing's not just for you, it's about other people and how it impacts other people and how it can help other people as well.
That's great. So basically, you're saying get stuck in, stick with it, and I mean, facing criticism it can be difficult, can't it? And you talked about how empowering it is and how good for self-esteem it is to get praise, but also we have to be able to cope with the audience. The audience isn't always going to be praising. I guess I'm so glad you mentioned Joelle Taylor, because I have some really good memories of Joelle coming into my college and working with our students, doing poetry workshops with our students, and producing some fantastic work with students, including students who had refugee and asylum seeker backgrounds, and had never written, and hadn't written in English at all ever. And I mean, Joelle is so inspirational. She's so fantastic. And I mean, this was over 10 years ago, and now she's kind of got this massive platform now, hasn't she? So
And she deserves it. She's
yeah,
amazing.
no, she is fantastic. So, is there anything that you can say about what you're working on now? You're clearly doing work across a wide range of media in lots of different ways. Are you working on anything now, and how's that going?
Yeah, I'm working on my book, and this book I'm really hoping will be traditionally published. This is the book that won an Eric Gregory Award from the Society of Authors. It's called Algorithms of Meaning, and it's exploring how technology, specifically artificial intelligence, but technology more generally as well, is influencing our relationships, our reality, and our meaning making. How do we find meaning in the age of deepfakes, when we can't really even truly believe what reality is? Like, there's deep fakes, there's data collection, reality and the virtual world is becoming a very liminal space. So because of that, it's hard to really figure out where you fit in that. Even as a Black woman, seeing how women and Black people are treated online is very interesting as a writer. And seeing how oppressed people experience the online space and how they're dehumanized, um, how you can see anti-Semitism online and Islamophobia and a lot of anti-disabled sentiment. And it's really important to also look at how the online spaces are bringing communities together, activism and creating friendships. And even I met my partner online. So really exploring how it's changing how we even make relationships and form relationships. It's a very interesting space to me. I'm just really fascinated by technology because I feel like it bleeds into everything, even health. Like I said, I have sickle cell, and there's been a cure recently, CRISPR, for sickle cell, which is gene editing, and exploring like what does that mean for future disabled people, and maybe one day there might not even be disabled people, and the ethics of that. So there's a lot of interesting source material, and I'm excited about it. I've done a lot of short films recently. One of my short films was actually selected to be in Chanel's show when Chanel came to Manchester, which was probably the biggest thing that's happened in my career, and it was so fulfilling. So I'm trying to make more films this year. I'm on Parable's Momentum program, Parable Momentum, which is with Channel 4 and the amazing Parable organization who invests in Black filmmakers who want to make films. So that's great. And I'm also doing the Poets of Color Incubator program, which is a year program from 2023 to 2024 to invest in your practice, which is where I'm exploring algorithms as well and creating new poetic forms. I've actually, interestingly enough, actually successfully created a new poetic form, and Roger Robinson is working with me to further expand it. I've been tasked with creating more, so I'm going to try and do that, and I'm trying to give it a name. But there's so many facets of being a creative. It's like I'm really trying to remain innovative. So be inspired by people who came before, the amazing artists who came before, who inspire me immensely, like Nina Simone and Audre Lorde, having that revolutionary spirit to talk about what's happening in the times and to be relevant and honest, and vulnerable, but also trying to innovate and create new poetic forms that can help future writers reflect on what's happening in their lives, and in our ever expanding world, and the technological space, and what that even means for like um, foreign policy, for geopolitics. Like there's so much that can be spoken about. So that's kind of what I'm exploring at the moment. And I'm also doing a new EP. I'm a musician as well. And my EP is exploring love and how we all perform for relationships, and how we're constantly performers, even if you're not an artist. The doctor performs, the teacher performs, and we all perform for love and affection and to be accepted within society. So that's really what my EP is about, love. Um, and that's called Eat My Heart, and that will be out very soon this year. So look out for it. My first single will be coming out in a month. So I feel like it's really important as an artist to really branch out, and whatever creativity you're into, it all feeds into each other, like I've been saying. So it's really important that you don't also get stuck in just one artistic discipline. I would really say try to explore broadly all of them and then zone in on two or three. So that might be you're a poet, you're a playwright, and you write essays. But in this ever expanding world of even AI, it's important to not just be in one field, because things will become more optimized, and it's important that you can use your skills in a diverse way, and to always have multiple streams of income. So that's just a really important advice, that when you're doing projects, try to make them wide ranging, but also be specific. That within whatever topic you're interested in, or within whatever discipline you're interested in, it is specific with the theme. So my themes, as I've talked about, is like technology, disability, blackness, femininity, all those things. So have topics and motifs that you really explore and you can expand on for the rest of your life. But to do that, you need to actually pick what you're interested in. So sometimes that takes finding out what you're interested in, which is a whole different journey in itself. But it's an exciting one.
That's brilliant, and there's so much breadth there. Um, I guess one of the things, one of the things we hear from young people sometimes is that, as you say, that there's so much stuff going on in the world. There's so much. It can be quite bewildering, can't it? There's a lot of bad stuff going on in the world, and as you say, hate speech and inequalities and injustice and so on. It can be quite difficult to actually find a voice, find something to say that you want to say, that's important, that you think is important, and also find the voice to do that. And I think for some young people that's quite a barrier. So they feel strongly about things, but it's just overcoming that, overwhelming sense that there's nothing I can do, there's nothing I can say that's original or that's different or that's worth saying. And I mean, have you got any more advice for young people who are kind of making that very first step on the journey of creating something in the cultural sphere, whether it's writing, music, poetry, film? Have you got any particular advice about that? Taking that first step.
Yeah, I would say lean into your imagination. Your inner child had it right. The interests of you as a child, follow that. Before the world told you were wrong, or you were strange, or that's boring, or that's silly, follow what you were interested in before you had any critical voices in your head. I have a niece, Star, and I just watch her and how she is absolutely just full of energy, and nothing scares her. And I always think, when did fear come into me? When did apprehension come into me? When did the low self-esteem start? And it's usually from the ages of 6, 7, 8, when you can truly start perceiving. Um, and you're not just soaking things up, but you're fully like immersed in the perception of your own reality. That's usually when the insecurities come in. So I would say follow your inner child. Your inner child had it right. Follow your inspirations. Follow what makes you excited. What makes you have, like, what gives you goosebumps. That's what you're meant to be doing. Wherever you have physical symptoms from, of like excitement, that's what you need to do. The imagination to me is the most beautiful part of being a human. The fact that we can imagine things and bring them into reality, that we can invent things, that we can invent technology, that we can invent new words, that we can create medicine. This is all a part of the imagination. Some people won't see that. Some people will say, "Oh, science isn't part of the imagination." It is, because for an apple to hit Newton's head and him make the connection, that is a creative connection. Oh yeah, gravity exists because of this. That's creative. So it's how can you utilize creativity in whatever field you're in, whether you're in a more overtly creative field or something that people don't tend to consider creative, like architecture, which is immensely creative. You're entering a building that came from someone's head, that is not crashing on you. It's like when I think about the world, I get so excited because I'm like, everything is kind of crazy. And leaning into the fact that we're living on a floating rock in space. There's so many things people don't speak about because they're like, oh, that feels mystical or strange. And it's like, no, a lot of life is a mystery. So use your imagination to fill out the mystery and to explore what excites you. So I would say my greatest advice would be follow your inner child one. Don't be afraid to explore your own imagination. It's not childish, it's not silly. It's important, and it's the reason our world works so well. It's the reason we even have the internet. So follow your imagination, be creative, be relentless, and get a mentor. It's okay to ask for help. You don't know everything. I'm realizing constantly there's things I can improve on. Now I'm exploring form, but a few years ago, the only form I really explored was sonnets. I was more of a free verse writer. Now I'm exploring form alongside my free verse. So feel happy to expand, take in criticism. This might sound crazy, but I love criticism. I had a quality control team for my EP to be like, that song is good, but you could change it in that way. This one, just scrap it. This one's amazing, don't touch it. So it's like, have a quality control team, show your work to people you respect and care about their opinion, have mentors, go to writing events, go to poetry events, go to events about playwriting, about art, about painting. They will inspire you and you'll even be surprised. I went to an event recently about carbon emissions, and that has inspired a whole different series of poems now. And that was not related to anything. That was about how can I decrease my carbon emissions. Go to things that will give you information and knowledge, because that will just naturally end up spilling out in your creativity. So it's really important to see yourself as a sponge and to not isolate yourself. I feel like people see artists as like these mystical figures that are always by themselves, and people project desires onto them and they're just in their house painting and they're like really introverted. And it's like, no, as an artist, you need to be outside. You need to see the world to be inspired. You need to have conversations with people. Some of my favorite poems came from conversations because someone told me their perspective, and I was like, wow, that's so interesting. This is my perspective. I want to talk about that and write about the conversation between us, the paradoxes, but also the way we connect. And people's minds are beautiful. So you can even just write a poem that's inspired by your mum, or you can write a poem about something that happened in the kitchen, or something you saw outside and you're projecting. Maybe a couple was walking past and you're imagining their conversation. Like, there is limitless possibilities for art, and just leaning into the limitless possibilities.
That's fantastic. And you just reminding us really that being an artist, being a writer is a social process. It's not about being isolated, locking yourself away, and being cut off from the world. It's absolutely social, isn't it? It's about other people, interacting with other people, interacting with society, but also reflecting on all of that. And I love the advice. I mean, I think it's such good advice about getting in touch with the inner child. Something happens, doesn't it, when children discover judgments, the judgments of others, negative judgments of others, and that they're going to be measured and valued by others, and that fear of the audience reaction somehow inhibits them. When
Yeah.
you're little,
Don't
when you're little, it's like people around you are saying that's great. You know, everything you do, everything you create, everything you come up with, people are saying that's great, that's so good, interesting, and somehow that changes, and that then puts barriers in the way. And somehow we've got to overcome those barriers, don't we?
100%. And I feel like it's so important to, it's also okay not to tell people your plans,
Hmm.
because sometimes they will put doubt in you. They'll say that's not realistic.
Hmm.
So it's okay to actually, I call this guarding your heart. And I do this a lot. What I won't tell people what I plan to achieve, they just see it happen. Because sometimes people will discourage you. So what I tend to do is I don't tell people all my plans. I'll just do it and then they'll see the result. And that's enough. So don't feel like you have to tell people your plans. just do it. Just do it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Um, Princess, thank you so much for your wisdom, your insights, your openness, your sharing of your practice, and thank you also for your work, because it is inspirational, it's fantastic, and I'm really looking forward to. I was just thinking about algorithms, because algorithms is this dirty word, isn't it? Well, we had a few years ago in education, we had this big thing about the exams when the exams were cancelled, and it was all algorithms, and everyone hates algorithms. But also they're vital. They're vital to all sorts of technologies, aren't they? So I'm really looking forward to reading about what you make of algorithms in the world, and a spin on algorithms.
Yeah.
So, Princess, thank you so much for being part of this project.
Anytime.
And we're obviously encouraging young people to engage, and to get involved in the creative arts and FE project. And it's been brilliant to talk to you. I look forward to meeting you, and to reading more of your work, and hearing from you again. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Eddie.